Chapter 44. Wheeler's Last Laugh. Before the body was even cold, the Digby Weekly Courier made good on its threat and rolled out its special edition, welcoming all in the Annapolis Valley to share in the cruel intimacy of the moment. The coverage was penned by a number of reporters prone to taking themselves a little too seriously, yet they somehow failed to give the event the sober reflection it deserved. Furthermore, it was clear from its content that the vast majority of the three-page spectacular was written well in advance of the day. The special edition sold for the unprecedented sum of 5 cents a copy, highway robbery compared to the cost of the paper's first Bear River tragedy handbill just 8 months prior, the exposé that had started it all. In lieu of the cogent analysis promised in the advertising, the special edition was nothing more than a regurgitation of the Courier's coverage to date, replete with all the errors of facts and haste-driven typos of the earlier editions. The reportage was also a gallimaufry of tone and sentiment. For example, the extra opened with the kindest comment the Courier had ever afforded Peter Wheeler: "If he were not a murderer, it would be said he died bravely." The Digby Courier also held to its promise to include illustrations. Its pages were festooned with line art representations of the principal sites, including a rendering of the Kempton home, the scene of the tragedy, as well as portraits of the key players. All of this was, of course, window dressing to the main attraction. The majority of the front page was dedicated to the only true confession, the subject of such manufactured debate, speculation, and envy. Aside from its ponderous and inflated length, this confession still bore an eerie resemblance to all past confessions attributed to Wheeler. To pad the word count, this rendition contained a substantial sprinkling of direct quotes, including every utterance that had passed between the killer and his victim. As for the most contentious issue, the slippery question of when the crime was committed, the Courier's pricey confession mirrored all prior accounts. Detective power be damned, the crime had occurred just after midnight. Anticipating considerable public outcry, the Courier ran an accompanying sidebar entitled "Some Points Explained." The foundation of the aside was an interview reportedly conducted with Wheeler a few days before his death. The correspondent was mindful of the criticism generated by prior attempts to force Wheeler's actions into Power's timeline. Accordingly, the Courier expected strong resistance to its version of events, in which it is shown that the idea of a midnight visit is not so unreasonable as it is thought. In a preemptive strike, the tabloid had sent its reporter to question Wheeler on the doubtful portions of the confession. The Courier's precautions were wasted effort. The final confession was no more credible than its predecessors. The tone, language, and syntax in it ranged wildly, suggesting a minimum of 3 authors, each with a hand in crafting a particular section. The Courier did include something no prior confession had presented. The tabloid spared no expense and went to great lengths to affix one last illustration to the end of the confession. If it were possible to speak from beyond the grave, Wheeler was having the last word and the last laugh. The confession was signed,